My thumb froze mid-scroll, the ocean breeze from my office window suddenly ice against my skin. There on my screen, my sister Olivia smiling from a cabana in Maui, diamond bracelet catching the Hawaiian sun as she raised a cocktail. The same sister who'd cried last week about being too broke to help with Mom's medical bills. The notification pinged. Another photo. Living my best life. #blessed, #no regrets. I zoomed in on her wrist. The gold corporate card tucked into her wallet's edge was visible in the reflection of her sunglasses. My corporate card, the one I reported missing 3 weeks ago. How much? The words scraped my throat as I called her. How much did you spend? She laughed, actually laughed. About $100,000. Don't worry, I left enough for Mom's little surgery. I gripped the desk so hard my knuckles blanched. That card isn't under my name. It's under my LLC. Do you understand what you just did? Silence. Then panic. What do you mean? You just committed corporate fraud, federal offense. Congratulations on documenting it all on Instagram. My name is Paige. I'm 29 and CEO of my own marketing firm. This is the story of how I reclaimed not just my money, but my identity from the people who thought they owned both. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised me. Growing up, Olivia had always been the golden child while I was the responsible one. The ATM, the safety net, the one who never said no when Mom called with just one more emergency. When Mom needed surgery, nothing life-threatening, just expensive, I'd opened a small personal card to help with the medical bills. But Olivia had found something better. My corporate gold card, the one linked directly to my business. The one I'd spent years building from nothing. I still remember Mom's voice when I confronted her that evening. I thought it was mine, she'd said, pulling my gold card from her purse, passing it to Olivia like it was her right. No apology, no shame, just expectation. That night, I sat in my darkened apartment, laptop glowing as I checked the damage. $104,782.53. Luxury hotels, first-class flights, designer shopping sprees, each transaction a direct slap, each receipt a betrayal in digital form. But Olivia had made a critical miscalculation. She thought she was stealing from her sister. She was actually stealing from Ellis Marketing Solutions, LLC, a registered corporation with fraud protection, insurance, and legal representation. Civil or criminal? Maya, my corporate attorney, asked the next morning, her voice matter-of-fact as she reviewed the charges. The question hung between us, weighted with family and consequence. Both, I whispered, the word tasting like freedom. Maya nodded, already drafting documents. The bank will freeze the charges. The insurance will investigate, and your sister, she looked up, eyes steady, will learn what corporate fraud actually means. I swallowed hard. Will this hurt my business? No, Maya said, but it will hurt her. Are you ready for that? I thought about the years of just this once requests. The birthdays missed while working extra projects to cover family emergencies. The small apartment I still lived in because every promotion meant more family hands in my pockets. Yes, I said, I'm ready. The machinery of justice moved faster than family guilt. Within days, the fraud report was filed. The bank locked the card. The insurance company opened an investigation. Every Instagram post, every geotag, every smiling selfie became evidence against her. The first text came at midnight. You wouldn't dare go through with this. We're family. There it was. The shield, the excuse, the boundary eraser that had worked every time before. My thumb hovered over the reply button, old habits screaming to apologize, to fix it, to keep the peace. Instead, I forwarded the message to Maya with 2 words. More evidence? Perfect, she replied. Consciousness of guilt. My phone rang at 6 a.m. Mom's voice crackled through, suddenly strong for someone who'd been too weak to handle her own finances. You need to stop this, she demanded. Olivia made a mistake. She'll pay you back. The familiar pressure built behind my ribs, the need to please, to appease, to be the responsible one who fixes everything. It wasn't a mistake, I said, voice steadier than I felt. It was theft, and it wasn't just from me. It was from my business. So you'll ruin your sister's life over money? The disgust in her voice was palpable. No, I replied. I'm stopping her from ruining mine. The silence stretched between us, decades of unspoken resentment crystallizing in the space. If you do this, she finally said, the family will have to choose sides. I closed my eyes. They already did. Years ago. After I hung up, I opened my laptop to a folder labeled For When They Forget. Inside, screenshots of unpaid loans, bank transfers for emergencies that turned into vacations, texts promising repayments that never came, years of financial abuse, meticulously documented because some part of me always knew this day would come. I forwarded everything to Maya. Context, I wrote. Building a pattern, she replied. This helps. That evening, I posted a single line to my company's Instagram. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who taught you not to have any. The comments flooded in. Support, understanding, people who'd been there. For the first time, I didn't feel crazy for wanting my own money to stay mine. The next morning, my car windshield was shattered, glass glittering across the dashboard like angry tears. No note, no rock, just destruction delivered in the night. But I'd installed security cameras around my apartment building 3 days earlier, right after filing the fraud report, a precaution Maya had recommended knowing how family conflicts could escalate. The footage showed a familiar figure, not Olivia, she'd never dirty her own hands, but her on-again, off-again boyfriend, cap pulled low, hoodie up, face still recognizable to anyone who'd sat through enough awkward family dinners. I sent the footage to Maya and the police. 2 more charges. Vandalism and intimidation. You're making this too easy, Maya texted. The legal papers found Olivia at her favorite brunch spot 2 days later. The server who'd been fawning over her all morning suddenly became cold when the court official approached. Funny how quickly Ms. Ellis becomes just another customer when the words fraud charges echo across trendy patio seating. Later that afternoon, my doorbell rang. She arrived at my door, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not the fury in her tight jaw. I can't believe you're actually doing this, she hissed, as if my following through was the true betrayal. I stood in the doorframe, not inviting her in. You stole from my business, Olivia. What did you think would happen? It's just money, she said, pushing her sunglasses up. You've always had more than enough. The truth hit me then. It wasn't just about money, it was about my identity. My sister didn't see me as a separate person with boundaries. I was simply an extension of her, a resource to be drained, a signature to forge. It's not about the money, I said quietly. It's about you thinking my name, my business, my life is yours to use however you want. We're sisters, she insisted, as if that explained everything. I handed her the court summons. Not in this. In this, you're the defendant. The door closed between us with a soft click that felt more final than any slam could have. That night, I slept without my phone for the first time in years. No middle-of-night emergencies, no financial fire drills, just silence and the strange, unfamiliar feeling of having protected myself. The insurance company worked with brutal efficiency. Within weeks, they'd approved the fraud claim, refunding every penny to my business account. But insurance companies don't just pay and walk away, they pursue. Suddenly, Olivia wasn't just facing her sister's lawsuit. She was facing a financial institution with legal departments larger than our hometown. Her emails changed from righteous anger to desperate pleas. Please, Paige, I'll pay you back. I'll do anything. They're talking about a lien on my accounts. I forwarded each one to Maya without reading past the subject line. The debt isn't mine anymore. I wrote back to the final plea. Talk to the insurance company. They own it now. Mom's messages grew more desperate, then more cruel. What kind of daughter destroys her own sister? She wrote. I didn't answer because there was no answer that would make sense to someone who saw my boundaries as betrayal. 2 months after the initial fraud report, one of my former colleagues at a local news station, someone who'd recognized Olivia's name from our shared past, reached out about the court filings, which were public record. The story broke the next day. Woman faces $100,000 fraud, charges after using sister's business card for Hawaiian vacation. The photo they used showed her on the beach, carefree with my money. No mention of the surgery that money was meant for. No context for the years of financial vampirism. Just another family drama made public. The courthouse was colder than I expected, all marble and echoes as my heels clicked across the floor. 3 months after discovering the fraud, we gathered in the downtown county courthouse for the final hearing. Olivia sat with her lawyer, wearing a demure sweater, an expression I'd never seen before, contrition crafted for the judge's benefit. When asked if I wanted to speak, I stood, calm in a storm I hadn't created. "This isn't about revenge," I told the silent courtroom. "It's about reclaiming my name." My sister didn't just take money. She stole my identity, literally and figuratively. She used my business, my reputation, as if they were community property. I looked directly at her for the first time in weeks. She didn't just spend $100,000. She spent 15 years of my hard work. She spent trust I'll never get back. The judgment came quickly. Restitution ordered, credit monitored, assets potentially garnished. Not criminal charges, I couldn't do that, not fully, but consequences, real and lasting. Outside, as I walked to my car, Olivia caught up to me. "Are you happy now?" she asked, voice brittle. I stopped, turned to face her. "I'm not happy. I'm free." Her laugh was bitter. "You think this makes you better than family?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze. "It makes me equal to family." "That's what scares you." I drove home alone, the silence in my car peaceful rather than empty. That night, I archived the last email, closed the final legal document, and opened a new folder labeled Boundaries Not Negotiable. Then I blocked both their numbers. I made the decision final. I would not accept any further contact from either my sister or my mother. Mom had ended up getting her surgery using her own insurance. I'd verified this through a mutual friend, but she'd never forgive me for holding Olivia accountable. As for Olivia's boyfriend, the security footage was enough for a misdemeanor vandalism charge. He took a plea deal and paid restitution for my windshield, but I never heard from him again after the court date. 6 months after the court proceedings finalized, with no contact from my family during that entire time, I walked past a jewelry store. In the window, a gold bracelet. Simple, elegant, honest. Not the one Olivia had borrowed years ago. Not a replacement for things taken. Something entirely new. I bought it with my own card, my own name, my own money, uncompromised by guilt or obligation. As the sales associate slid it onto my wrist, I remembered something my grandfather once said. "Love shouldn't cost you your self-respect." I'd always thought he meant I should sacrifice more. Now I understood he meant the opposite. Walking home, bracelet catching the late afternoon sun, I felt something I hadn't in years, whole. Not because I'd won against my family, but because I'd finally stopped playing a game rigged against me from the start. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about reconciliation. Sometimes it's about closing an account that was draining you dry and walking away with whatever remains. Not in anger, not in vengeance, but in the quiet certainty that you deserve the same care you've always given others. That's not revenge, that's restoration. The scream tore through the apartment before I fully processed what I was seeing on my iPad screen. My sister, her dress hitched high on her thighs, her body pressing against my fiancé, was lunging toward him, lips pursed. Then came his voice, firm but panicked. "Olivia, stop!" I said no. My fingers trembled against the cool glass as I hit record, the weight of 3 years of suspicion crystallizing into this single, grotesque moment. From 200 miles away in my hotel room, I watched as Tyler backed away, his hands raised defensively. Olivia's face contorted, no longer the practiced smile she showed our parents, but something feral and entitled. "Why her?" she hissed, gesturing wildly. "She's always been the boring one. Just try me once before you decide." The air in my lungs felt solid as Tyler's back hit our bookshelf, the one we'd assembled together on our first anniversary. He was cornered. I could see the panic in his eyes, the same eyes that had looked at me with such certainty when he'd promised I'd never lose him like I'd lost everyone else. "My name is Vanessa. I'm 31 and a marketing director. This is the story of how I finally broke the golden child spell. I'd spent my entire life watching Olivia take whatever she wanted. 3 previous boyfriends had fallen for her practiced vulnerability, her calculated attention. Each time, my parents had shrugged it off. "You should be more like your sister," my mother would say, as if my heartbreak were just another example of my inadequacy. When I met Tyler 5 years ago, the connection was immediate and terrifying. I kept him secret for nearly a year, manufacturing excuses for why he couldn't meet my family. I knew exactly what would happen. Olivia had a type: successful, attractive men who could elevate her carefully curated image, and Tyler checked every box. The inevitable introduction came after a year of dating. I watched Olivia's eyes narrow when she saw him, that familiar predatory assessment I'd witnessed countless times. But something different happened. Tyler stayed firmly by my side, his hand in mine, redirecting Olivia's attempts at conversation back to include me. For weeks afterward, she sent him increasingly suggestive texts. When she escalated to sending a photo of herself in lingerie, I confronted her in our mother's kitchen. If I really wanted him, I'd have him by now. She'd sneered, theatrical tears already forming. Right on cue, my mother asked me to leave, adding the familiar refrain. "He's more your sister's age anyway." Now, 3 years later, watching through my iPad screen, I saw the culmination of Olivia's entitlement. She'd arrived at our apartment unannounced while I was away on business. Tyler had been video calling to show me how he was caring for my bonsai collection when the intercom rang. I told him to keep me on the call, suspicious of the timing. On screen, Olivia lunged forward again. Tyler dodged, his voice rising. "I said no!" He pushed her away. Not hard, just enough to create distance. But she twisted dramatically, throwing herself backward. The sickening crack of our glass coffee table breaking beneath her weight made me gasp. Her screams filled our apartment as Tyler rushed to call an ambulance, his face pale with shock. I sat frozen in my hotel room, the recording still running, knowing exactly what would happen next. It did. Within hours, Olivia claimed Tyler had assaulted her. Her thigh injury, requiring stitches from hip to knee, became evidence of his attack. My parents rallied around her, my father threatening Tyler with destruction, my mother calling me to say I needed to face the truth about that man. But for once, I had actual truth on my side. The recording showed everything: Olivia's advances, Tyler's repeated refusals, the accident caused by her aggression. When I presented it to the police, the narrative collapsed. Tyler's countersuit for assault and defamation succeeded, resulting in a substantial settlement that Olivia was ordered to pay. "He doesn't need the money," my mother had hissed when I answered her call after the court decision. "You've always been jealous of your sister's looks, her success. Now you've ruined her life to get back at her." I'd stared at my mother's name on my phone screen, suddenly seeing clearly the pattern that had defined my life. "No, Mom, you ruined her life by never showing her boundaries, and you nearly ruined mine by teaching me I deserved whatever scraps she left behind." Olivia moved away, unable to face the community that had witnessed her disgrace. My parents blamed me entirely. Their golden child's reputation was shattered, and in their eyes, I had betrayed blood for an outsider. I went from limited contact to almost none. My relationship with Tyler remained strong, though his parents initially viewed me with suspicion. Their son had nearly lost everything because of my family's drama. It took time for them to see that I was nothing like the chaos I came from. Gradually, Tyler's family became mine in all the ways that mattered. His mother invited me for weekly lunch dates. His sister texted me daily. His father taught me to fish on their family's boat, something my own father had only ever done with Olivia. When Tyler proposed last summer, his parents were ecstatic. "We're paying for the wedding," his mother announced. A proper Tuscan celebration for the daughter we never had. The words had made me cry. I didn't tell my parents about the engagement. My aunt and 2 cousins were the only blood relatives I invited to our destination wedding. It should have been simple: a clean break, a new beginning. Then came the texts. Somehow, my mother had gotten my new number. I later learned my cousin had shared it with my grandmother, who was still in contact with my parents despite knowing our situation. The messages started reasonably, asking about my life, suggesting reconciliation. When I didn't respond, they turned venomous. Yesterday, my aunt called to warn me that my mother was posting vicious lies about me on social media, threatening to boycott any family member who attended the sham wedding of my ungrateful daughter. I stared at the wedding invitation on my desk. Cream-colored paper with gold foil, Tuscany's rolling hills illustrated in delicate watercolor. The thought of my mother's bitterness reaching into this perfect weekend made my chest tight with something that felt dangerously like hate. But could you truly hate your own parents, even ones who had consistently chosen the child who hurt you? My phone lit up with another text, Tyler's mother. Just checking the final head count for Friday's welcome dinner, and remember, your dress fitting is tomorrow at 3. I'll bring champagne. I looked at the photo beside my computer, Tyler and me on his parents' boat, both sunburned and laughing. Behind us, his father was making bunny ears over both our heads, while his mother pretended to push us overboard. They weren't perfect, but they were mine now. I blocked my mother's new number without reading her latest message. Then I called my aunt. "They're threatening to show up," she said immediately. "Your father booked flights. My friend at the travel agency saw the confirmation and warned me." "Then we'll have security," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Anyone who couldn't love me when I needed it doesn't get to claim me when I'm happy. 3 weeks later, under a Tuscan sunset, I walked down an aisle lined with olive trees. Tyler waited at the end, flanked by his beaming parents. My aunt and cousins sat in the front row, defiant in their support. The seats where my parents might have been remained deliberately empty, not as a sign of absence, but as a reminder of my choice to prioritize peace. Sometimes the family you're born into teaches you exactly what you don't want. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the family you choose shows you everything you deserve. When Tyler's father stood to give his speech, he raised his glass toward me first. "To the daughter who found us when we didn't even know we were looking," he said, his voice breaking. "Your strength has made our son happier than we've ever seen him." In that moment, watching the sunset paint everything gold, I realized something profound. Absence can be a gift when what's missing is the weight that once held you down. My blood turned to ice as Amanda slid each glossy photograph across the polished mahogany dining table. The snapshots showed me, head tilted, hand occasionally touching an arm, smiling and engaged with different men in restaurants and cafes around the city. The sharp intake of breath from my mother-in-law Eleanor filled the suddenly airless room. "Look at these," Amanda said, her voice dripping with performative concern as she turned to my husband. "While David has been working himself to exhaustion, she's been running around town with other men." She placed her hand on his shoulder, standing too close to him, while Jessica, the woman he'd been sleeping with for months, sat silently at his other side. Amanda's eyes gleamed with triumph as she delivered her final blow. "Now you don't have to feel guilty about Jessica, and you definitely don't have to give Sophie anything in the divorce." My name is Sophie Bennett. I'm 32, and this is the story of how I turned my husband's family's betrayal into the most important lesson they'd ever learn. The family I had devoted 8 years to gathered around those photos like vultures. Eleanor picked one up with trembling fingers, her voice breaking with practiced disappointment. "Sophie, how could you? We welcomed you into our family." Once, her words would have cut deep. Now I just observed her performance with clinical detachment. "What do you have to say for yourself?" Amanda demanded, one hand propped on her hip, the other dramatically pointing at the evidence spread before everyone. I took a deliberately slow sip of water, my eyes moving across the table. David still wouldn't meet my gaze. His parents looked appropriately devastated, though I noticed his father, George, seemed more uncomfortable than angry. Amanda stood tall, her posture radiating righteousness. "Nice pictures," I said calmly. "The lighting is excellent. You must have paid your private investigator quite a lot." Amanda's triumphant smile faltered. This wasn't the tearful denial she had scripted for this moment. "That's all you have to say?" she snapped. "You're not even going to deny it?" I reached into my purse, feeling everyone tense, waiting for tears, or perhaps a desperate confession. Instead, I placed my tablet on the table, its screen dark and reflective against the wood. Why would I deny it? My voice remained steady. Those men are all divorce lawyers. The silence that followed was absolute. What? Amanda stuttered, her composure cracking. I pointed to each photo methodically. That's James Morrison, the best family lawyer in the city. This is Michael Turner. His firm specializes in cases involving infidelity. And this dinner, that's William Parker. He's particularly skilled at handling cases where people try to hide assets before a divorce. Amanda's face drained of color. David suddenly found his water glass fascinating. You see, I continued, when I discovered David and Jessica 3 months ago, I decided to prepare properly. You're lying, Amanda said, but uncertainty had replaced her confidence. I activated my tablet, displaying emails and signed agreements. The wonderful thing about legal consultations is that there's always documentation. I scrolled through the files deliberately. But that's not even the most interesting part, I added, finally looking directly at David. What do you mean? Eleanor's voice trembled. Well, I said, during one of these meetings, I learned something fascinating about recent property transfers in this family. Lots of money and houses changing hands, new companies being formed. I let the implications settle over the room. George shifted uncomfortably in his chair. David frowned, turning to his father. Dad, is that why you had me sign those papers last month? You said it was just routine family business. I watched realization dawn on his face. His family wasn't just helping him cheat. They were systematically hiding assets before the divorce. David, sweetheart, we were just protecting you, Eleanor began. Actually, I cut her off, you were committing fraud. I smiled thinly. And my lawyers have documented everything. Amanda collapsed into a chair, the architect of her perfect trap suddenly finding herself ensnared. You knew, she whispered. You knew this whole time. I nodded, gathering my belongings. Next time you hire a private investigator, make sure they're not working for both sides. I stood, smoothing my dress. Oh, and David, your lawyer will receive the paperwork tomorrow. You might want to read it carefully, especially the part about fraud. At the door, I turned back to Amanda. Thanks for the photos. They'll make excellent evidence. My heels struck the floor like a metronome as I walked out. Only when I reached my car did I finally allow myself a small, private smile. They thought they had trapped me, but they had no idea what was coming. The next few days unleashed chaos. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from David's family, threats mingled with tearful pleas. Amanda cycled between rage and panic, her texts growing increasingly desperate. You can't do this to us, we're family, her latest message read. That word, family, lingered in my mind. They hadn't treated me like family when they were planning to leave me with nothing. I archived her message without responding and focused on my preparations. James Morrison's law office projected exactly the power it intended: gleaming wood, supple leather chairs, and an atmosphere of quiet authority. I reviewed documents in the conference room while waiting for the others to arrive. Right on schedule, David entered with his lawyer, followed by Eleanor and George. Amanda trailed behind, attempting confidence, but failing visibly. Mrs. Bennet, James greeted me with a professional nod. Shall we begin? I watched David's expression as James methodically presented our evidence. He paled noticeably when we displayed our timeline. Every suspicious property transfer, every hastily created company, every deliberate attempt to hide money. Eleanor clutched his arm when James mentioned potential criminal charges. This is nonsense, David's lawyer protested. These were normal family business decisions. Were they? I asked, sliding forward a stack of documents. Because these records show my name was removed from family business assets exactly 3 months ago, precisely when David began his affair. Quite a coincidence, don't you think? George shifted uncomfortably. He had always been the weakest link, too concerned about his social standing to risk public scandal. Now, James continued, we're prepared to be reasonable. Mrs. Bennet helped build this family's success. She simply wants her fair share. fair share, Amanda snapped. She's trying to ruin us. I turned to her, maintaining my composure. No, Amanda, I'm protecting what I helped create. I paused. Would you like me to play the recording of you and David discussing how to keep the gold digger from getting anything? Her face went white. David's head snapped up. You recorded us? No, I replied calmly. Your mistress did. Jessica was quite helpful once I showed her proof that you were planning to discard her too, once you'd secured your assets. The room erupted. Eleanor dissolved into tears. George demanded to speak with his personal lawyer. Amanda screamed about betrayal. Through it all, I sat quietly, watching my husband realize how thoroughly he'd been outplayed. Here's what's going to happen, James spoke over the chaos, his voice commanding immediate silence. We have documented evidence of attempted fraud. We can pursue this criminally, or we can reach a reasonable settlement today. Your choice. David's lawyer requested a moment with his client. As they huddled in the corner, I could see the fight draining from David's body. He'd always been arrogant, convinced of his own cleverness. But now, he looked hollowed out. We'll agree to fair terms, his lawyer finally announced. Excellent, James smiled. Mrs. Bennett has already outlined her requirements. He distributed copies of my settlement proposal. I'd been thorough but not vindictive. I wanted what I'd helped build, nothing more. This is outrageous, Eleanor exclaimed, but George placed a restraining hand on her arm. Sign it, David, he said quietly. We can't risk this getting out. As David picked up the pen, Amanda made one last desperate attempt. Wait! Those photos, they were in public places. She was flaunting these meetings. I couldn't help but laugh softly. Of course they were public. I wanted you to see them. Every lunch, every coffee meeting. I knew you were having me followed. I just made sure your investigator captured exactly what I wanted you to see. The realization that they'd been played at their own game finally silenced them. One by one, the documents were signed. As James gathered the paperwork, I stood to leave. Sophie, David called, his voice strange. When did you get so calculating? I paused at the door. I learned from the best, didn't I? Family taught me. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. As I walked out of the office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning, it's about showing them they underestimated you all along. Outside, the autumn air felt crisp and clean. My phone buzzed with a message from Jessica. It's done. Thank you for showing me the truth about him. I smiled, remembering how easily David's mistress had become my ally once I showed her proof of his pattern. His promises to her, his plans to discard her just like me after securing his wealth. Sometimes the strongest alliances come from unexpected places. Driving home, I thought about family, not the one that had betrayed me, but the one I would build for myself now, on my own terms. 6 months after the settlement, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, sipping coffee and watching the city awaken. Morning sunlight cast long shadows across my newly furnished living room, highlighting the fresh start I'd created. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica of all people. We'd maintained an unlikely friendship after everything. You won't believe who I just saw at Riverside Cafe. Amanda, she actually tried to pretend she didn't see me. I smiled, remembering how thoroughly the family had unraveled after our meeting. Their carefully constructed facade of perfect family business had cracked under the weight of their own schemes. George had retired early, claiming health issues, but everyone knew it was to avoid the whispers at his precious country club. Eleanor had thrown herself into charity work, desperately trying to maintain their social standing. Amanda perhaps had faced the harshest reality check. Her role in the attempted fraud had cost her position in the family company. Last I'd heard, she was working as a junior accountant at a small firm, a significant step down from her former executive title. My phone rang. James Morrison. Sophie, he greeted warmly. Just wanted to let you know the last of the transfers are complete. Everything's officially settled. Thank you, James, for everything. You know, he said thoughtfully. In all my years practicing law, I've never seen someone handle betrayal with such strategic precision. Have you ever considered a career change? I laughed, but his words resonated. In outmaneuvering David and his family, I discovered parts of myself I never knew existed: strength, cunning, and an ability to see several moves ahead. Later that afternoon, I met Laura, my closest friend, for lunch. She'd been my rock throughout everything, one of the few people who knew the whole story from the beginning. "Have you heard?" she asked, sliding into her seat. "David's been demoted. Apparently, some of his business decisions during the divorce drama didn't sit well with the board." I shook my head. I'm not surprised. He always did think he was smarter than everyone else. "Speaking of smart," Laura leaned forward, "how's the new venture going?" After the settlement, I'd used part of my funds to start a consulting firm helping other women navigate complex divorces and financial disputes. It felt right, using my experience to help others protect themselves. "We're expanding," I said, unable to hide my pride. "Opened a second office last week." "Look at you," Laura grinned. "From being blindsided by your husband's betrayal to running your own empire. Who would have thought?" I reflected on the woman I'd been a year ago, trusting, naive, willing to believe in family loyalty above all else. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, but not bitter. If anything, I was grateful for the lessons learned. My phone buzzed again, another text from Eleanor. "I miss you. The family isn't the same without you." I archived it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. That evening, as I reviewed applications for my firm's mentorship program, I reflected on how life had changed. The family that had tried to destroy me had inadvertently set me free. Their attempts to leave me with nothing had pushed me to become something more than I'd ever imagined. The doorbell rang. Jessica with a bottle of wine. Our monthly catch-up sessions had become a tradition of sorts. "To Karma," she raised her glass, settling onto my couch. "David's dating someone new, by the way. Poor girl has no idea what she's getting into." "Should we warn her?" I asked, half joking. Jessica laughed. "Something tells me she'll figure it out on her own. Besides, I hear she's quite clever with computers. Maybe she'll catch on faster than we did." We shared a knowing look. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about moving forward while watching karma do its work. As the sun set over the city, casting an orange glow through my windows, I felt at peace. The family that had tried to write me off as naive had taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. My new life wasn't built on revenge or bitterness. It was built on wisdom, strength, and the knowledge that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best beginnings. I raised my glass to the setting sun, silently thanking them for teaching me exactly who I could become. The story of how my husband's family tried to destroy me had become the catalyst for my greatest transformation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better.